Welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches making the big time where they're at. Today, our host, Coach Preston Peterson, interviews a high school strength coach who is creating a big time strength conditioning experience for their student athletes. Today's episode is sponsored by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr provides strength conditioning software to athletics programs around the country. Whether you write your own programs or want access to over 100 templates, TeamBuildr can make your program more efficient, more accountable, and smarter when it comes to measuring your team's effort in the weight room. Visit their website and start a 14-day free trial at teambuildr.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey guys, I'm excited to bring you a great episode with Coach Tobias Jacobi of Strong Rock Christian School in Georgia. Coach has been at Strong Rock Christian since 2014. He previously spent 15 years at the collegiate level, coaching at East Carolina, Charleston Southern, Kent State, Western Carolina, Elon, North Carolina, and Cumberland University. Coach was named the 2017-2018 NHSSCA National Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year. Coach Jacobi has had the opportunity to coach a number of athletes that have went on to compete at the collegiate and professional levels. Coach is also the NHSSCA Georgia State Director and the National Editor of Print and Video Content. In this episode, we discuss how Coach Jacobi uses social media to impact his program. We learn about his mission, how he fundraises for his program, his training philosophy, how he implements assessments of athlete attitudes, and much more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Coach Jacobi, thank you for coming on the Big Time Strength Podcast. I'm excited to learn from you. Let's get this thing rolling. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and where you are now?
Well, I am currently at Strong Rock Christian School. It's a small private single-A school on the south side of Atlanta. Previously, before that, though, I spent 15 years as a collegiate strength and conditioning coach, coaching mostly at the Division I level, East Carolina, Charleston Southern, Kent State, Western Carolina, Elon, University of North Carolina, and I actually got my start at Cumberland University, which is an NAIA school just outside of Tennessee. So I'm going into my fifth year at Strong Rock, so we're looking at about 2 decades of strength and conditioning experience is what I've been lucky enough to do. Got my undergraduate degree from Cumberland University, physical education. I, while coaching in college, got my CSCS, did the USAW. I've actually done TPI, USA track and field, all those kind of things as far as that goes. But predominantly my experience had been at the collegiate level. Now has moved to the high school level 5 years ago.
That is a ton of experience to draw off of for the high school level. Can I ask why you made the switch from the collegiate level to the high school?
Well, I had a really good job. I had an opportunity to work for one of my mentors at Jeff Connors at East Carolina. We had an amazing staff, group of coaches. I was the first assistant there. I was doing a lot with football. I was in charge of men's basketball. We were having some success in men's basketball, so everything was very, very positive in that respect. However, my oldest daughter was struggling in school academically, and honestly, I was getting at the point in my life where I said, okay, I had been a head guy at a 1A before, and I was honestly looking at, from a security standpoint, do I want to look at my wife every December and January, wonder if we have a job? And I just felt that it was the right time. Strong Rock presented some things that were very attractive to me from a support standpoint, a financial standpoint, and it was an opportunity also for me to come closer to home. So it was just one of those things that the stars lined up right, and I said, God's telling me that it's time to go home a little bit, and so we made that decision, and honestly, it's been the best decision I could have ever made.
That's awesome, Coach. And it's really cool to see your transition and know that you're putting family first. That's pretty cool. This past week, I actually me and my wife welcomed our first son into the world. So he's
awesome.
He's a pretty cool little dude, and kind of puts things into perspective for you. So that's cool to hear. So can you kind of tell me a little bit about your program's mission? Or some of your core values, or what you're building your program off of, just those standards?
A couple years ago, I had an opportunity to hear a presentation that really challenged me as a coach. And that's something that I think as professionals we have to constantly do to ourselves. And it was Jeremy Boone's presentation at an NSCA regional, and he talked about core values. And that's when I think I said, you know what, why do we do what I know what we do, and I know why we do it, but I've never really sat down and put pen to paper. And I think that there's a significant level of accountability when you put pen to paper and put your ideas or philosophies or values. In this case, we're talking about core values, putting it, stating this is what we're about. And so I had to really think about my program, my experience, my kids, because everybody's culture is different. Everybody's support system is different. And I really wanted to embody what I felt Strong Rock strength and conditioning was about. So our core values are pretty simple. And it's something that our kids we try and ingrain in them on a consistent basis. We start off with excellence. And I think with excellence, you strive to be the best person, best whatever athlete you are on a daily basis. I could care less if I have LeBron James in the weight room training or I have a kid who can't walk and chew gum. I want them to strive for excellence. Obviously, that may look a little different between those two examples, but excellence is excellence. So excellence is our number one. Respect. We want to respect not only each other, we want to respect our facility. We want to respect what God has blessed us with. So that's a big one in our program. Accountability is our third. Obviously, accountability is unfortunately something that is not very well taught, probably is a good way to say it, in today's day and age. So we try and get our young men and young women to understand accountability to the person in the weight room, accountability to your teammates, accountability to your coaches, getting our kids to understand that they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And honestly, that's an easy transition for us because we are a faith-based school, and trying to get them to understand that they are, they represent not just their last name and their parents and so on and so forth, but obviously our Lord Jesus Christ. And then our last one is performance. We want to make sure that our kids understand on a daily basis, you're going to have to perform. So, and it's not just in the weight room or on the athletic field, but it's in life. When our boss is a perfect example. My principal came in on Friday, my last class of the day, and we got a game later that night, and he does an evaluation. Well, guess what? I better be on point, especially since my principal's a new principal. So it's just one of those things that's a life skill that we try and teach and ingrain in our kids. So those, excellence, respect, accountability, and performance are our four core values.
Those are great pillars to build the program around. And I kind of want to hear, what is it that you're looking for when your athletes are done at Strong Rock? What are you expecting from them to know or be able to do when they leave?
Obviously, my background tailors it to if we have a young man or young lady who has the opportunity to play at the collegiate level, that they will be as hopefully prepared physiologically as they can. And we try that. However, 99, we all know the statistics on college athletes and pro athletes, so on and so forth. I maybe have had 3 or 4 a year total that have gone on to compete athletically at the college level, and that's all our athletes. So, our focus is just trying to get our young men, we stress tremendously on technical application of exercise. We have a long list of progressions. As you and I talked a little earlier about our different levels of training, I'm sure we'll get into that. We want our kids to be functionally sound movers. We want them to be strong. We want them to be athletic, all those. The bottom line is we want them to be good children. A big part of Strong Rock Christian School is that we partner, and this is in our mission statement, that we partner with parents to help develop the children under our charge, and that's a big part, and I don't take that lightly. So, we really focus on the total individual. At Strong Rock, we have a unique situation where we have 4 pillars of our school, and that's probably why I ended up choosing 4 core values of our strength and conditioning program. But our 4 pillars of our school are academics, athletics, fine arts, and missions. So we have some unique, I don't want to say challenges, but situations with Strong Rock where I don't have a lot of time in the classrooms a lot of days because of crazy different things I deal with on a yearly basis. My kids literally go all over the world and do mission trips. We have a very big connection in Haiti, Honduras, Nicaragua. So we have sent a lot of our students down there from time to time doing missions work. So we've got some. The one thing I can say about Strong Rock, and I'm very blessed in many ways. Don't get me wrong, but I really have great kids, and the support from our administration, the support from our parents has been just. I couldn't ask for anything more. Do I have a bunch of 6'4", 275-pound monsters walking the hallways? Not on your life. But the kids that I have, I truly, truly enjoy going to work on a daily basis.
I mean, that's cool when you can go in every day and know that you're going to be able to make an impact with so many lives. And I think it's very cool what you talked about with your school pillars and tying that into what you're doing for your core commitments or core values in the weight room. So that's awesome. One of the things that we've continued to do on the show is try to ask, what is a way that you're making the big time where you're at? What makes your experience at Strong Rock a big time experience for your student athletes?
What I try and do, honestly, it's something that I was very intentional when I came here. There's no secret I probably have a very big social media presence. I meet a lot of people this past year, especially with some of the awards and accolades I was given. I met a lot of individuals that would come up to me and say, "Coach, I feel like I already know you from all your videos and things like that." So I want to really highlight the young men and young women in our program. So a big part of that is our social media presence. A big part of that, honestly, is my commitment to them. The level of individualization in our program is pretty high, and it takes a lot of work, and I think that's important as a coach. I don't believe that I should just tell you I'm working hard. I'm going to show it, because when our kids come in and they start looking at what we're doing, how we're doing it, how it's organized, there's no question the fact that they're getting the best that they can. So that's a very, very important piece. And then, two, I really, really push, honestly, the facility is very important to me. I'm going to take great care of it. We've been very, very lucky recently where we had some facility renovations. And, I think it's tremendously important that we give our kids the best that we can so they can be successful. And they see that. So it's really just trying to do the job, the job that I've been tasked with, but just doing it to the best of my abilities and giving our kids the best opportunity that they can to be successful. So, those are how I'm trying to make the big time where I'm at in that respect.
Those are great things. I'm sure all the student athletes love the social media presence and knowing that, every one of their programs, every one of their workouts is well thought out and planned. And it's one of those things that they know that it's individualized for them so that they can improve. And I think that's something that just automatically, when students know that it's buy-in, that's them trusting you and knowing that there's a process, and that's very cool. Can you tell us a little bit about, you ended there with how much you guys make sure to invest into the weight room. Can you give me some ways that you fundraise or just look to improve just your facilities, maybe some of your equipment, that type of stuff?
Well, I've really attacked it a couple ways. And obviously, being a private school, there's some negatives and positives in that. And when it comes to the fundraising term, we've been allowed to, per our school to utilize the critical reload program, which has been a game changer for us, where financially we were able to raise enough money that we actually outfitted a complete second weight room. At Strong Rock, we have 2 facilities. We have basically one for our guys and one for our girls. And so the ability to do that second weight room came from the fact that we had raised so much money with our critical reload program that when the opportunity came that we started a capital campaign we had a capital campaign a couple of years ago going, that by the time I got all the monies for that capital campaign, I had already purchased so much of what I was going to buy anyway that I was able to build a whole second weight room. So the critical reload aspect was huge for us. And I know it's been mentioned on your program before, but Mike Bewley does a great job. It's kind of funny. I met Mike back in 2003, I think, at a conference, and he was at Georgia Southern at the time. I was at Western Carolina, and he had just told me he had started this little company about, called Critical Reload. And I said, okay. And I listened to it, and it was a great idea, but we weren't doing anything like that at Western at the time. And so honestly, as time went on, I'd followed Mike and where he'd gone and traveled, but, never really thought much about Critical Reload until I came to Strong Rock. And when I took the job, we were going to, luckily our athletic director said that was something we were going to do. And so I jumped right on board. Mike and I had a previous relationship, so it made it easy. And it was just one of those things that made sense and honestly has been a game changer for us at Strong Rock. The second way I've really addressed fundraising kind of goes back to what we talked about just a second ago, and that was the social media presence. A lot of times when you start a capital campaign or something along those lines, you'll have an initial excitement about it, a boost term, whatever you want to use, and we did. But as time goes on, and unless somebody walks up and writes the check right then and there, it's going to take a while. And so that's what happened with us. And so what I decided to do was I had a lot of our parents on our Facebook group. I started looking at research, honestly, from an advertisement standpoint and saying, okay, how do I get this to people who can do something with it, but at the same time, I can't go out and sit here literally, as a private school, we're not allowed to go and ask for monies because of how we're structured. So I said, how do I do it but don't do it? And so that's what I've used our Facebook group for. I studied a little bit of a couple things that you can do on the Facebook group settings, got it to where every time it popped up on that Facebook page, the top thing came up. It was our fundraising project. On top of that, I would consistently once a month, post some other things about the facility and why it would benefit and how it would benefit. And that got really, really positive feedback. I don't know if it was the linchpin in us getting it done, but I do think it had some success with that eventually being completed. So those were the 2 big areas from a fundraising standpoint that we've utilized.
That's great information. A couple times you've brought up just how you're using social media. Maybe give us a little bit of a rundown of the highlights or the top things that you try to do with your social media. Is it something where you have kind of weekly, you're trying to hit a certain checklist, or is this something that you are, spur of the moment? You're like, man, this would be great to have out there. Or can you kind of just give us a rundown of how you're doing your social media?
Yeah. The funny thing is it started all with a Facebook group, and it also, the intentionality ended up happened because of one of my year-end reviews, honestly. So after my second year, I sit down with our principals, just like everybody else does, and they were going through our year-end reviews, and they were very complimentary of what we were doing. And then my principal brought up the Facebook page and said how how much that they loved the administration, and I had no idea about this, loved it. They said they loved seeing our kids highlighted. They loved the interaction with the parents. They just loved that whole idea. And honestly, that was totally something I had no idea had really happened. So once that happened, I became intentional where I'll post something once a week on purpose, whether it's videos of our kids lifting. I love highlighting our kids. That's what it was initially set up to do. But I've also I added a Twitter account. I've added an Instagram page where we will utilize those as forms of communication, because not only is it a situation where I'm trying to get information maybe to our parents or maybe to possible people who can help our program, but also to the kids. And so I'm realistic. Kids don't use Facebook. Kids, what they'll do is they're Instagram, Snapchat. Now I haven't worked on Snapchat, so I'm not going to go there. But what I will do is I'll stay on Twitter. They're on Twitter. The parents are on Twitter, so I can. It's a great way to communicate. But what I will try and do is we'll either post videos of our kids training, pictures of our kids training. We'll post pictures of anything that is a highlight of whether it's a school record or strength and conditioning All-American, something along those lines. If a kid, for example, if a kid commits to a university, we're going to post that because we want to highlight our kids. The next thing that we post on there, honestly, is a lot of informational stuff. Whether it's, I posted a couple weeks ago about hydration, and how many per pound of body loss of water, you need this many, ounces to replenish your body weight. Well, it started a great conversation with a parent of how much should their kid be drinking. That's awesome, because now guess what? They're thinking about it. I don't find this out until about a year later, but a mom comes up to me and says, "Thank you for posting such and such on your Facebook page, because my son has started eating granola bars all day long now because of it." She said he never would do that until you did that. Thank you. So it's really been something that's kind of been organic, honestly, and it's starting. However, now that I've had a couple of success stories, it's something I'm even more intentional about. Do I have a checklist? No, I don't. What I'll do is I'll evaluate if there's great information. If it's something pertinent, then I'm going to address it. Perfect example. We had a couple kids cramp last night. My mind's already spinning on how we can address that via the social media aspect, how we can address that with our pregame meals type stuff. I'm in my car driving home last night thinking about that, and how we got to do. I have to try and do my part, to try and help my kids. So that's how we're going to address it there. But I don't have a checklist. I just kind of say, okay, this is something worthwhile, and I'll post it on all three of our accounts typically.
That's awesome, Coach. I think that's great for your student athletes. I think it's great for their parents. It's great to be connected with the community. That's all awesome stuff. Kind of switching gears now, what is your training philosophy?
Well, I have three philosophical beliefs in training athletes. First and foremost, we are going to train explosively. How we do that can be done a million different ways. Then the second one is we're going to train to get strong, and then we're going to train to prevent injury. I believe those three things are paramount when you're dealing with an athlete. So when our kids come in the weight room, they're going to learn how to train explosively. I'm a big believer in progressions. Honestly, I've been that way for a long time. I did it in the college level with our guys. So we're going to teach. Never will a kid walk in a weight room at my place and bench press, squat, and power clean. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen in college. That's not me. So what we're going to do is we have anywhere from a 6 to 9 week progression with our kids and all our primary movements that we're going to work through. I'm in a unique situation at Strong Rock where I have the ability where I actually teach our 7th and 8th grade strength training classes on top of all our high school classes for our guys. I have an assistant. She takes care of the girls. I do all their programming. She implements it. It's really something that I've been going through and learning a lot about as far as age-appropriate exercise. I think initially, and I've said this many times, when I first took the job at Strong Rock, I thought I was going to reinvent high school strength and conditioning. And about a month into it, I figured out I have no clue what I've gotten myself into, because they're two totally different realms between a high school strength coach and a collegiate strength coach. And unfortunately, I know this because I've lived it. I know this because I see it, that we have a lot of college strength coaches that don't get that. And that's no disrespect to them. That's just, they've never been in that realm to understand it. So that's kind of a pet peeve of mine, I guess, if you say that a college strength coach, recommends stuff to a high school strength coach when they don't understand what we deal with. So, I hear Gary Schofield talk all the time when we joke about it, where, he says that, if he's talking to a strength coach in college, he says, your worst 2%, that was my best 98%. So imagine what our worst 2% at high school looks like. So I am a big believer with progressions. We break down our training in a bunch of different ways to be able to give the kid what they need when they need it. The differentiation in our program, the individualization, whatever term you want to utilize, has been, it's worked year after year after year after year of doing it. I just believe my job is to give the kids what they need when they need it. And it's my job to figure out how to evaluate them in that manner. And honestly, that's taken quite a bit of time. I had a strength coach, a college strength coach, come visit a couple months ago, and I was explaining our system, and he was a younger guy, and I could kind of see I was blowing his mind about how I went about things. And I kind of had to stop him. I said, you do realize this has taken shape over the course of almost 20 years. And, that's something that I think sometimes as coaches, we see all the bells and whistles and we don't understand what it took to get there. And, I admit I was the world's worst. Everybody talks about what's a mistake you made early on as a coach. Number one mistake I made early on as a coach is I'd go to a conference, I'd come back, and I'd be implementing stuff. And I didn't realize I needed to temper what I learned for where I'm at. And so my big focus with our kids is just really figuring out, how do I give them what they need from a physiological standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, because again, you're talking high school kids. That's a totally different dynamic from a mental and emotional standpoint than a collegiate kid. So that's been kind of my charge to myself as far as our program goes, with philosophy, if you will.
That was a great rundown of a lot of the questions I had, and one of the things that you talked about is you continue to bring up progressions and how you break that down and give it to them, give it to your student athletes at the right time in the right order. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your block system or level system? I know that you incorporate something that's like what you said, maybe took 20 years to refine, and I'm ready to be blown away, just like the young college strength coach you were talking to a couple of weeks ago.
Well, first off, I'll talk about our progressions, then I'll talk about our training protocol of how we do it normally. And actually, this is a really crazy year for me. So this is something, and it's something I've never done before at the high school level, and I needed to do it. So what we did this year was, I've got a new CEO, I have a new principal, and I have a new class schedule. Okay. So I have no clue what's happening on a day-to-day basis when we started our school year, because of how drastically different my world had just become. So what we do right now with our kids in the high school is we're going through a 6-week technical progression of exercise on all our primary movements. So I'm teaching even I have a kid who's committed to Georgia Tech. He is a physical freak monster. He's going through these technical progressions. Luckily for me, I came up with the idea before, and that way I have a lot of flexibility with myself right now in our training to where I can learn our program. So we're going to go through those for 6 weeks. I mean, it's starting off with body weight exercises. I remember watching an old Joe Ken hammer strength clinic video from when it was down, I think, at Florida International. This was years ago. And he was just talking about how isometrics and the good athletic positions. And so that's where we start with our high school kids. We're going to master body weight. We all have those kids who can't walk and chew gum, and we probably all have those kids who are pretty good athletes in the same class. So what we do is we start everybody off. People term it block zero. I don't know why I termed it our base program, but I did that years ago, so I just stuck with it. So we're going to master all our body weight stuff, work through our technical progressions for 6 weeks. And then after our 6 weeks, we actually have a week off for our fall break. And then we'll get into our individualized strength training plans. And we separate our individualized strength training plans around 2 things. We classify our sport that the kids play, and then within that classification, we will have 4 different levels of training. So when I talk about classifying sport, and I'm going to tell you why we do this. I'm at a small private school. Well, guess what? I've got a kid whose parent owns like 5 or 6 golf courses. Take a wild guess what sport they care about, and the only sport they care about. But I've also got a kid in the same class who's going to go play football in college. Guess what he cares about? I totally get the unified approach, and especially when we're talking about dealing with coaches and classrooms, that's a very, very organized way to do it. I totally get that. So, and I'm all about it. And I like that idea because the bottom line is we're training athletes. I don't believe in sport-specific necessarily training protocols at the high school level. College, totally different deal. But at the high school level, especially the fact that I have so many multi-sport kids, it's something that we have. So we classify sports. We do 3 different classifications. My infantry, that's my football players, my wrestlers, and my track and field throwers. Those are the sports that are collision sports. Those are, you're going to take a pounding, you're going to take a beating. Those are those individuals. My cavalry, that's my position players in baseball and softball, basketball, soccer, my track and field kids who sprint and do jumps, and my volleyball players. Those are our contact sports. Those are kids who are going to have to learn to absorb a little bit of load. My infantry, obviously, they got to learn to absorb a lot of load. And then finally, I have my artillery. That's my pitchers in softball and baseball, my cheerleaders, equestrian, cross-country distance kids, golf, tennis, and we actually have a shooting team as well, so I have to account for them. So that's where they fall in with that. And so taking all that information in and looking at it, my infantry guys, when we clean, and we'll clean twice a week. Well, my artillery kids, and we test in a bench press, we test in a pause bench, the power clean, and a front squat. And those 3 things, all our kids are going to do, every single one of them. However, everything else that they do is going to be dictated a lot of times by either the classification or the level of sport they're in. So if I have a golfer, I had a kid who's playing golf at West Virginia now, who's the best golfer in the state a couple of years ago. Kid loved to power clean, loved it. Awesome, great. You're only going to clean once a week. Because guess what? I really don't. I'll run the risk once. I won't run the risk twice of messing up your wrist. That's just common sense to me. Did he have to power clean once? No. But I knew it was going to be a consistent battle, so I said, let's roll with it. This is kind of how we'll do things, and it's worked out well. So once they're classified in their sport, then we break their training down into different levels. And what I do is I have a base program for our ninth graders, a base program for our not a base, that's a different term. I have a ninth grade program, a 10th grade, an 11th grade, and a 12th grade. And every single one of those has a bench, squat, clean requirement based off their body weight, their strength index, which is their total weight divided by their body weight. Then it also has a corresponding athlete's attitude with them. So we utilize the athlete's attitude spectrum that Brian Clark talked about and has with his kids, as far as, I don't have it in front of me, it's reluctant, resistant, compliant, committed, compelled. And so all of our kids will get a score upon that, or a grade on that, and they will be in one of those 5 categories, which will help dictate what program they're in. So, and then obviously we also take in their movement screen score on top of that. Now, with that said, my Beast program is my 12th grade program. My Patriot program is my 11th grade program. My Scarlet is 10th, and Blue is 9th. Those are, we're the Patriots and our mascot. And obviously we have our, we're adding our school colors. So my 12th grade program, I'm going to have 4 maybe that'll be Beast program kids, and that's it. That's a program that honestly is more geared toward that kid who's going to be a college level athlete. And all 4 of those kids who are in that Beast program are college level athletes. 3 of them are already committed, and 1 will be probably here soon. So, it's, again, giving that kid what they want, what they need at that appropriate time. And so it's worked out very positively in that respect. And it takes a lot. It's a lot of work. But I think, again, like we talked about, making the big time where you're at, that's a big part of what I believe I owe our students, to give them the best program possible. It's something, too, utilizing the athlete's attitude is something that we actually I just started doing this past year. And honestly, it came from a conversation from a couple of years ago that I had with Pat Ivey, who was at Missouri at the time, is now at Arkansas State. And Pat talked about the different levels of programming that they did with their kids. When I had this conversation with Coach Ivey, he was I was at Charleston Southern University at the time. And he said something that really resonated with me at the time. And he said, we don't put a kid in our top level training program if we don't trust him. I said, you know what? That makes perfect sense, because I'd always done it by bench, squat, clean, that kind of stuff. Not, do I really trust this kid that he's going to be successful in it? And I looked for a long time ever since then, how do I gauge that level of trust? And then I came across Brian's spectrum, and it clicked. It made sense. It was a great idea. I thought, this is something we can use with our kids in our program. And so we actually started using it, and just not paralleling it with our programming. But as time went on, I said, you know what, there's my key. There's what I need to do, how I want to organize it. And, utilizing that attitude part has been really big for us. As a coach, we all look at, we all love the big vertical jumps and the big bench presses and squats and cleans and all that stuff. But what do we look at when we talk about how our kids are from a mental aspect, emotionally, spiritually? Are they becoming the young men and women that we want them to be? And then 2, how do we assess that? How do we all talk about, I've been around plenty of coaches that say, oh, this kid's a turd, he's bad. How? Why? And how are we as coaches telling them, this is where you're at? So this is one of the ways that we do that at Strong Rock, and it's been something very positive for us in that respect.
I really like that idea. I'm just trying to think about how that would play out within a classroom. Do kids like to see where they're at? And is that a kind of a daily score or a weekly score, or is that something that you'll look at every quarter? What are you doing? And then how do they respond once you do give that, let's say, grade?
The athlete's attitude thing, we partner that, so it's a piece of all of our other testing and evaluation. So we'll do it once a semester, and typically it's at the end of the semester, and they'll see it and they'll know it. And there'll be some kids who I've seen them look at it and roll their eyes. Well, guess what? There's take a wild guess on what end of the spectrum that they're on. So it's one of those things that, and then too, it has sparked conversation. Well, coach, what do I do? Why am I just compliant? And then that gives a coach an opportunity to express, you do everything you're asked to do and you don't do any more. Well, coach, why am I resistant? Great conversation. That's an opportunity. That's a learning opportunity for that child. Now, you have to, as a coach, you have to be willing to have those conversations. You have to be willing to document the reasons why. What I mean by that is, when I'm on the floor with my kids, I have a coach's sheet, and I'll write down stuff nonstop. I write down notes about every single workout. And if and when those grades come up, and it's not I don't put that in as a part of their letter grade. It's just part of the evaluation. If I have that conversation, then I'll pull them aside. And my kids pretty much well know that myself well enough that if they really want to know, then they'll come to me individually, because they understand that the class takes precedence over anything that we're doing. But I will be willing to talk to them and see what their point of view may be. But I will keep notes constantly. So if they come to me and say, Coach, why am I reluctant? This is why. And I'll spell it out for them. So it's one of those things that you have to be very good in articulating what you think, and you really have to remove emotion from it, because they're going to be emotional anyway. They're children, and that's okay. That's who we deal with. So we have to be the adult in that respect. But it's had a very positive impact on our kids, where I had a kid who was, reluctant last year, and he's borderline right now compelled, which is awesome, because he's coming in all the time. He's doing everything he has to do. To see the kid mature has been a true blessing for us. So, hopefully he'll stay on the right path, and he'll be one of the kids that, as coaches we can count on. But honestly, as a society, long term, he's somebody we can count on, because that's more important than all the wins and losses and all that stuff. So it's really been a way that we've utilized a way to evaluate that and give them feedback, because that's number one. That's a lot of the things that kids want now. You go to any teaching seminar, they want feedback. That's probably one of the big reasons technology is so big in academia now, is the instant feedback that kids get. So you just have to be very intentional when those sheets come out, and I am honestly probably 60 or 70% less confrontational, just because I know that there's going to be confrontation, because there's sometimes I want that. But I think it's truly imperative as a strength and conditioning coach that your kids know where you see them. How many times have we gone through off seasons and semesters where whether we have a bad, whether they're termed a bad kid or a great kid, they just don't know. So this is one of the ways that our kids will know. They'll know where they stand.
I think of a couple things when you go through this is, first of all, if I was a student in your class, I would want to know that score way more than my grade. I don't know how you grade, what you base those standards off of, but I would want to know, am I committed? And I think I've seen the chart that you might be using, or I know other coaches have kind of made a chart that they'll post in the weight room and kind of say what the expectations are. And I love that. I mean, that's an awesome conversation to have. And the second thing I think about is when you do have that conversation, and maybe they don't believe what you're saying to them, or they think they are a little bit different. Like that brings up a whole nother conversation and a whole lot more growth for them. I think that is a very, very impactful thing that you're doing. That's got me really intrigued on how I can implement that and do it efficiently.
Well, honestly, one of the things that I think, and I don't know why this is, and maybe it's because of technology or whatever it is, our children nowadays do not understand conflict resolution. They don't. They think it's going on Twitter or blasting somebody on Facebook or Snapchat. It's not about, and this is, again, this goes back to who we are as a school, where we are, a Bible-believing school, and the fact is biblical. God tells us, go to the person if you have an issue with them. Handle it appropriately. And we're trying to partner with our parents and trying to raise these young men and women up. It's an opportunity for those kids to develop in that respect. And so that's why I said I'm intentional about my mindset when I put those grades up, because I know how they're going to feel. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things, it's one of those things that, and too, honestly, I sit back and watch, and I'll just say, I'll post it and I'll see, okay, who cares about it and who doesn't. And then that sometimes if the kid has earned a grade, a level of, say, he's resistant or reluctant or whatever, and he doesn't come to me and talk to me about that, that's another issue that I may be right. However, if I am, why is that not bothering that child? So, because the weight room, we all know this, and we're strength coaches. We wouldn't be strength coaches if it wasn't this way. The weight room is a great, microcosm of life and how the kids are going to do things, and not the biggest bench press, squat, power clean, but how they work and how their effort there is a great snapshot of that. And so, it's one of those things that I think our programs, probably a little different in that respect, that we may take, the mental and emotional side of things a little more seriously, with our kids.
That's development for life, man. That's huge. I agree with you about the conflict resolution. I agree with you that, there is a disconnect with how we confront people. And I really think that what you're doing is something that I want to implement. So that's pretty cool stuff, Coach. I appreciate you bringing that up and sharing so much about it. You've been at Strong Rock 5 years. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep, I'm on year 5.
So you're on year 5 now. What is you had a vision going in, right? And then you said a month in, you're like, okay, I got to reassess or whatever. And then you were the National Strength Coach of the Year this past year for the NHSSCA. You're doing big things. Can you tell me what your vision is for your program in the next 5 years? What are you going to continue to do, or what are you going to grow and get better at?
Well, it's an easy thing to answer because of the fact that we have to fill out yearly goals and things along those lines. I'm very, very lucky where our program is going to get better in a couple of areas, and honestly, I know it's going to get better because of the people that help me with it. My assistant, like I mentioned earlier, Heather Miller, she works with our girls program. We're going to continue to grow and develop that program to where it's on the level with our guys program. Our guys program, for the most part, is pretty good, pretty strong with it as far as the kids that we have within our daily classes. And so we're going to continue to really work and strive for our girls program. And a big part of that was the fact that we have a girls weight room for them. So that's one big area. Another area, honestly, is obviously continuing to learn. I have a unique setup now where my volunteer assistant is Gary Schofield. And so when he's not running all around the country working for play, he actually helps me in the weight room with my kids. And so that's another unbelievable mind with my students that I have access to. So really picking his brain and seeing what he, I think I like being challenged because I think it helps you grow. And so utilizing his vision and his scope is going to help me. 5 years from now, I just want to continue to develop our kids. We've done something every year a little bit different, whether it's been in the facility, whether it's been with technology, whether it's been with motivation. Obviously, when we did the facility renovations, that was a big part of it. This year we added the PR board and the bell and things along those lines. We're really getting the kids they've bought into it when we utilized it during the summer. We haven't utilized it yet this year because of we're going through our technical progressions, but I'll be really excited to see it. There was a lot of positives from the summer with that technology. I want to continue to really develop with our kids because I think that's just, again, another way that you get buy-in. It's another way that, we're going through our SACS accreditation this year, and that's a big piece of that is students using technology within the classroom, and that's a big part of how we're evaluated as a school, and I want to be on the cutting edge of that. So that's something I want to continue to get better. And honestly, I want to continue to get better as an educator. It's something that I strive to do, where I want to have unbelievable lesson plans. I want to have unbelievable standards. I want to have, all the things that I'm, as a strength coach with my background, I may not be as well versed in. I want to be an expert at it.
Those are unbelievable goals to an already unbelievable program. And I'm appreciative that you are, continuing to learn and continuing to grow, pushing for more. It fires me up, when you've been in the profession for 2 decades and you're still willing to do that stuff. It's pretty cool to see, and it sets a model for myself. And I know a ton of other young coaches. So I appreciate that, Coach. We are moving into the last little bit here, the finisher, and I'm going to give you 5 quick questions to wrap kind of the end of the show up. And when you're ready, we'll just kind of fire them and you throw out whatever you got. You ready?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. What is your favorite office snack? Spark. There you go. Keep that energy high, right? Who is the person that influenced you the most?
My O-line coach, my first O-line coach in college, Coach Walter Wells.
What is your favorite quote?
Colossians 3:23. Do everything as if you're doing it for the Lord, not for man.
What is your favorite hobby outside of training?
Spending time with my 2 little girls.
And then the last one, who is the small school strength coach that is killing it and deserves a shout out?
Rob Brokaw, no doubt. Unbelievable. Little guy out of nowhere, Nebraska, doing unbelievable things.
I'm going to have to connect with him too. He's somebody that definitely I've heard talk. He's very, very passionate, and I'm happy you threw his name out there. He's on top of his game for sure.
Rob actually puts on the Nebraska high school strength coaches clinic, and he had me speak at it last year. And I'll be honest with you, I've been to tons and tons of clinics. I was blown away at at his place. Not just his place, but a tiny high school in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, and he's got 150 coaches sitting there just putting pen to paper all day long about training. It was awesome, absolutely awesome. And he's going to do that. I think what he's going to do is he's going to have his on Friday, and then the regional is going to be on Saturday, and so they're going to pair it together because Rob is the NHSSCA state director for Nebraska.
Yeah, that's awesome. That'll be an amazing experience. If people wanted to get in contact with you, what is the best way to reach out?
Any of my email or my social media accounts, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter. We have our strength conditioning Twitter page is at SRCS_strength. Then we have our Instagram account, which is, again, SRCS_strength. And then my email is tjacobi@strong-rock.com.
Thank you, Coach, for giving that out. I know that there will be people that want to learn more from you. A lot of experience, and you are definitely willing to share it all. That's awesome. I appreciate all that, all the time and effort that you put into this. And thank you again for coming on the Big Time Strength podcast.
Thank you for having me.